Good morning. It would appear to be that we are close to 9 o'clock. I'm just waiting to see whether we are correct, then we can start. Thank you.
Chair, it's gone 9 o'clock. You are quorum.
Thank you, Hassan Musa. I think we, as you indicate, we are correct. So good morning on today, the 12th of June. This is a virtual meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance. And today we are going to be briefed on the APPs, the annual performance plans of both Provincial Treasury and the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. So good morning to all the honourable members. Good morning to Honourable Minister and the teams from Provincial Treasury and the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board. I'm Leon van Wyk, the Chair of the Finance Committee, and I'm going to give an opportunity for members who are all online today just to introduce themselves and then just give an opportunity to Minister to introduce herself. And then thereafter, I think it's possibly going to be the easiest if we deal with the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board's APP presentation first of all, and then we can follow that with Provincial Treasury. And then possibly we can take any questions after the first presentation and then do the second presentation thereafter. And I think just requesting members to be mindful of the fact that we have two of these presentations, and therefore to make sure that our questions are quite crisp and clear in the presentation, so that we, or after the presentation, so that we can make the best use of our time. So good morning all. I'm handing over to introductions.
Morning, Chair. It's Dave Bryant, member of the committee.
Morning, Chair. Noko Masipa, member of the committee. Thank you.
Morning, Chairperson. My name is Norman Kontlo, member of the committee.
Morning, Chairperson. Khalil Provincial, member of the committee.
Morning,
Right.
Chair and everyone. Nama French Mbombo.
Good morning there. Thank you to everyone. And over to you, Minister. Good morning to you, and welcome to this committee meeting, and also welcome to your team. And yes, I'll hand over to you, and then members of the PT and Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board can introduce themselves.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having us, Deirdre Bartman, Minister of Finance. I'll hand over to HOD Kantana for the Provincial Treasury team, and I know the board and the members are sitting together as well. Chair Basuda and the CEO can then also just introduce the respective teams. Thank you so much. HOD. HOD, just remember to unmute.
Yes. Apologies for that. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, honourable members. My name is Tulinda and colleagues. So my name is Tulinda Gantana. I'm the head official from the Provincial Treasury. We do have a almost full bench with us this morning. In order to save time, I'm just going to render an apology. Mr. Victor Senna is on leave, and Mr. Isaac Tia is currently with the, I think in the municipalities. But we do have all the senior management team and online. And I'm going to, with your permission, Chair, perhaps when we deal with the APP and the responses to those, that the various managers will then just do a quick introduction before they respond to particular questions.
Thank you. Chairperson Basuday.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Honourable Chairperson, members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to brief on the annual performance plan. I'm at the Western Cape County Investment Board offices. I'm Claude Basquet, Chairperson of the board, and in attendance at the board is Mr. Matthews, the head of ICT, Zoe Sia, CFO, Mr. Bennett, the head of compliance, CFO, Mr. Abrams, and Mr. Nichols, board member. We also have board members online. We also have our responsible gaming manager, Mr. Lowe, and our head of licensing, Mr. Nsolo, at the board. The online we have Dr. Leroux, board member, and Ms. Jolly, and Mr. Burton, and Mr. Chetty. Well, thank you very much. And
Sorry, can you move to the mic? I can't hear properly.
And the last member, Ms. Ndava's also board member online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. And I think, yes, if we could then perhaps just start with the Gambling and Racing Board's presentation. First of all, I think as indicated there, the sound was not coming through perhaps as well as we would have liked to have hear it. So hopefully with the presentation it will improve. Thanks. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Sorry about that, to try and get the sound across. We have a presentation which will be presented by our CFO, Ms. Siwa. As indicated earlier, though, members of the board and executive committee are in attendance at the board meeting rooms to answer any questions or provide further information. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Ms. Siwa to the presentation. Thank you.
Morning, members. Are you able to hear me?
So,
Okay.
the sound quality is not very good, but we can hear you. I think we'll just need to speak up there.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Members, good morning. I just wanted, there's a correction on slide 1. I think in the presentation that has been circulated, it is indicated that the board is an entity of provincial and local government, and we have corrected it as an entity of provincial treasury members. On slide 1, we have indicated what we will cover today, the overview of the board, the organizational structure, the mission, the vision, and core functions, key programs, projects that will be driven this year, and contribution to the Provincial Revenue Fund. Members, I am going to take the presentation as read, and so I will just highlight some of the matters as part of the presentation. On page 3 of the presentation, the board is a Schedule 3C PFMA provincial public entity. That means that the board is financially dependent on the provincial government, either through grants or legislated revenue, and as a result, the board cannot solicit funding outside of the legislated revenue sources as per the Act. On slide 4 of the presentation, as the Provincial Licensing Authority for Gambling and Betting in the Western Cape, the board functions as a regulatory body and is not a service delivery entity. And for that reason, the board does not directly contribute to the budget policy priorities of growth for jobs or safety or well-being. The board does collect taxes and levies, however, on behalf of the Provincial Revenue Fund. And these tax collections then therefore makes an indirect contribution to the budget policy priorities. On page 5 of the presentation, the board does have 8 board committees, and there are 34 quarterly meetings planned for the 26-27 financial year. The board meets on a monthly basis. There's 11 scheduled board meetings and 2 ad hoc board meetings. So as part of the APP, we have 13 board meetings planned. However, the board is sometimes required to meet on an ad hoc basis to deal with issues that requires their attention. On page 6 of the presentation, section 12 of the Act sets out the powers and the functions of the board, of which some is to invite, consider, and dispose of license applications. And the board is also responsible to collect and administer taxes, levies, duties, and license fees under the Act. On page 7 of the presentation, in terms of the overview of the board, at the national level, the National Gambling Board conducts oversight evaluations on PLAs in accordance with the National Gambling Act. At the provincial level, the board reports to the Provincial Treasury and the Minister of Finance, Minister Barton. Minister approves the annual budget and the annual performance plan, which is communicated via the Provincial Treasury. The board does have quarterly engagements with the Minister. We have quarterly reporting to the Provincial Treasury in terms of financial reporting, non-financial performance. And we also have quarterly engagements with the Provincial Treasury in the form of the GLC. And we have annual engagement with the Oversight Committee on the board's annual report, but also engagements based on invitations from the Oversight Committee, such as today. If we go to page 9 of the presentation, the board it has had a review of its organizational structure, and currently the board has an approved structure of 115 positions. We have indicated the increase or the growth in the gambling industry. For example, in 2025, the board collected bookmaker taxes to the amount of 1.2 billion versus in the current the 26 financial year, 1.348 billion. 97 of these positions has approved funding currently, and the board is still engaging the minister on funding for the remaining positions. If we go to page 11, members of the presentation, we have indicated the mission and the vision of the board. I'm not going to go through that. On page 13 of the presentation, we have program 1, which is board and administration. The purpose is to assist the minister and give effect to the mandate of the board. The outcome of program 1 is to foster a responsive, fair, and sustainable gambling environment that promotes good governance, fund protection, and socio-economic development while mitigating gambling-related harm. We have included some of the examples of output of program 1. I think the board meetings where resolutions are adopted and given effect, and this is also where the board then gives effect to the mandate, and also at these board meetings, license applications are approved. On page 14, members of the presentation, program 2 is the licensing department, and they are responsible for the coordination of an efficient license application process. So they will then conduct probity investigations, and then based on that investigation, makes a recommendation to the CEO or the board for consideration. The outcome of program 2 is that persons licensed by the board are continuously assessed and found fit and proper to conduct gambling activities, ensuring the establishment of a legal, ethical, and sustainable gambling industry in the Western Cape, free from corruptive elements and contributing to public trust. The performance indicators for program 2 is license applications are processed within a specific time frame, and renewal applications are processed before the date of expiry. If we go to slide 15, in terms of the regulatory compliance department, they are responsible to ensure or to enforce compliance, as well as the timely investigation of allegations of illegal gambling activities in the province. The outcome of program 3 is a compliant gambling environment that provides adequate protection to the industry, for the industry, ensures the welfare and good order of the province's citizens, and maintain public trust and confidence through the strict enforcement of legislation and the regulatory requirements. Performance indicators for, or the outputs for program 3, licensed establishments carrying out gambling and betting activities that are compliant with the laws and regulations, and no illegal gambling operations are shut down. Page 16 of the presentation, if you look at the information and communication technology, ICT, this program provides and maintains ICT projects, solutions, and services for the Office of the Board. The outcome is development and implementation of innovative, functional, reliable, and secure ICT solutions and systems that drive long-term organizational effectiveness, etc. And the outputs of program 4 is continuous ICT systems management and just ensuring that the board is able to conduct its business. Page 18 of the presentation, the projects that we will be growing this year, members, as included in the APP, or the strategic focus for the board, the social responsibility, the protection of society from overstimulation of gambling, safe and responsible gambling protection. In terms of economic development, the generation of revenue taxes for the provincial government, economic empowerment of the historically disadvantaged, and if you look at compliance and enforcement, responsible gambling focus will be early detection, public notices, and enforcement of legislative amendments. And if we then look at the last slide, which is page 20, the contribution to the Provincial Revenue Fund. In the prior financial year, the board has collected 1.7 billion rand in gambling taxes. In the 1st March 2026 financial year, that has increased to 1.8 billion. So the increase in tax collections was 110 million rand. And the board received 29.8 million rand in a government grant, which represents 1% of the tax collections. And that has been consistent for the last 3 financial years. And we are saying then that the gambling industry makes a significant contribution to the provincial fiscus, and then also creates employment opportunities, and through CSI contributes to the budget policy priorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I think all the committee members have received the various documents, and I think I could now hand over to committee members for any questions that they may well have. So I think I'm looking for hands from committee members. I think procedural officer, if you can just assist if they are. I see Honourable Nkondlo's hand is up. Good morning to you. So you're welcome to go ahead.
Morning, Chair. Are you allowing us to ask questions?
We're going to take questions now on the gambling board, gambling and racing board, and then after that we will move on to the provincial treasury's presentation, so that we can, that we don't sit with too much documentation before us in terms of having to ask questions. So you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The first issue, Chair, that I would like to register is that I think as a committee, one of the issues that was raised and continuously is being raised by the AG is the fact that part of our work on oversight, particularly on financial oversight, should include or must include our engagement with the departments around their APPs before those APPs are concluded. And I think we are going to have to then have a discussion amongst ourselves as committees that if we get to discuss the APPs of finance, let alone generally all other departments, post when already the departments have concluded on their APPs, because it means this discussion that we are having is just for noting. That's the first part, Chair. The second one, considering what has been presented in front of us, I would like to just understand just a few things from the board. One is that with the increase that we see in gambling, is it possible for the department or for the board, when they are making the presentation, to also, because I see the CSI part that is presented, is it possible to also indicate to us, if they do have data that talks about those that would have been found in the previous year, that are involved in illegal gambling, just to understand the sketch in the province and what in the APP is then the equal intervention, to deal with that problem. Secondly, also the online gambling, which has actually attracted a lot of young people, particularly with the level of unemployment that we have amongst the youth, that I think it was recent, there was an article that actually was indicating, I think it's Betway, if I'm not mistaken, and others, how young people are so much involved, in gambling. So I just want to understand whether this is an issue which the board has identified or is aware of, and is there any research that they would be engaged in this particular financial year as part of the socio-economic research that they undertake to inform, their work as the board. And then the other issue I just want to understand between the board and the department, particular through the minister as a shareholder. What mechanism is available? Is there a shareholder compact between the department and the board? How are you compacting, or how are you doing agreement of what is in the APP? The very thing that I think was being indicated, that you have quarterly meetings with the department. I just want to understand the method, or what is the actual legal document that gets to be signed between the minister, the chairperson of the board. If I can just understand that legality. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Member Nkondlo. I think those are a number of important questions that you certainly need to be tackled. Do we have any more questions on this round of questions? I'm not seeing any further hand, but I think we can then hand over to the department, to the board, and for their responses and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to ask the head of compliance, Mr. Bennett, to respond on both questions, give the sort of details on those board responses to those issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. On the first issue regarding illegal gambling, yes, that seems to be a problem at the moment, but it is not a provincial problem as such, as more a national problem. There's two types of illegal gambling. The one relates to the online gambling, which is currently illegal, and then obviously is retail. What I can say, and we've probably said this before, is that in terms of the retail illegal gambling, the Western Cape Gambling Board has a very good relationship with the relevant law enforcement agencies in the Western Cape. So we can say that whenever we do get any allegations of illegal gambling, such allegations are investigated within 30 days, and with the relationship I have with the law enforcement officers is we actually close that cases down expeditiously. So we do not actually have any issues with in terms of retail illegal gambling. When it comes to illegal online gambling, what we need to do is once we've established if there's a presence in the Western Cape, if there's an office of these organizations or if they have servers here, then we are able to procure a search warrant and then we could often act on that list. In fact, we haven't found any instances like that before. The only online cases that we've dealt with is internet cafes, which is posed as internet cafes. They were fronting, but in the meantime, they were offering illegal gambling, online gambling to people. We have closed down a number of those cases. In the Western Cape, we were actually the first province to actually have a successful online closure. Yes, it was a clear agreement, but it still was successful. So when it comes to retail, we don't have an issue. Online is a national problem at the moment. The provinces are currently engaging on various aspects of how to deal with this. There are a number of organizations that has to get involved, the ISPs, the banks, and we did have one meeting last year on the 1st of October. There was further discussion as to how we're going to take this matter forward. The National Gambling Board is aware that this is not only a problem in terms of these people taking money out of the country, but it also has other implications such as legal gambling operators do not have any responsible gambling practices, and then that exposes those people to that. So that is the issue on that. That is where we are with illegal gambling. From ourselves, we are still as a province, while we trying to address it with local authorities. Like I said, it has to be a national thing, and there seems to be a bit more traction in terms of the provincial bodies getting together and having to deal with it. When it comes to responsible gambling, the board has now also taken a more enhanced approach regarding that. In the past, our initiatives have always been slightly reactive, meaning that we've instituted exclusion processes, and we one of the few provinces that is running the national exclusion process, even though the legislation is not in place. So while we got a list, provincial list of people who want to be excluded, is 80% of the people on the list does not reside in the province, but we obviously cater for those people as well, and we process their exclusions. We send it to all our license holders, and we also send it to the other 8 provincial boards and the National Gambling Board. They in turn would then have to circulate it to their license holders. The board has decided to have a bit more awareness going forward, so that people can be educated more regarding not really problem gambling, but what responsible gambling entails. So there is a number of initiatives that the board plans to do this year. One of the things that we also get involved with when the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation has certain drives within the communities. We do that, we get involved. Something that the board has been involved with on a regular basis is the government 2-song program, where we go out to outlying communities with a number of other entities as well. And during that time, we also set up our table where we discuss the issues relating to problem gambling as well as illegal gambling in such communities as such. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Chairperson, if I may, I'd like our responsible gambling manager to just add a little bit more.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. We share the concern about youth gambling and the prevalence of underage gambling. And as Mr. Bennett has indicated, we are collaborating with both the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation and the NGB on their initiatives. However, we have also established relationships with the Western Cape Education Department, where we are directly working with some schools, and we're trying to increase the numbers of schools that we are reaching, specifically encouraging and explaining to youngsters about the illegal nature of gambling underage and supporting them in that. We are also collaborating with universities in the Western Cape, where we are exploring doing research on prevalence of problem gambling, not only in the province, but we are working on collaborations there. And we are collaborating with a broader national group of university professionals in the student support services, where we will be presenting our new approach to responsible gambling, to share it broader and then to bring more universities in so that we can have a footprint in the Western Cape at that level as well. But we know that not all youth will be in university or at school, so we are also working on materials and initiatives to reach people regardless of whether they are in one of those venues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those responses. I'm just looking to any other members with questions. I see Minister Bartman's hand. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the team in Provincial Treasury also just to speak a bit about the research that we're doing for the fact that we're working on legislation and how we're supporting that in and adding to that answer. HOD and team.
Through you, Chair, thank you. I'm going to ask Claire to just come in on that particular point. Thanks, Claire. Claire, I see you unmuted, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, HOD.
Yes.
Oh, okay. There
Hello.
There we are. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, no
just
problem.
a technical issue. Apologies for that. Yes, the Provincial Treasury is spearheading quite a lot of research initiatives related to gambling. We are looking at various forms of gambling, online gambling, as well as the traditional casino and LPM industry. We are also undertaking research looking at new forms of gambling which are currently not licensed. And that would be historical horse racing machines, as well as a betting exchange, person-to-person betting exchanges. And as part of the research aims to encompass broad areas in terms of looking at the demand for various forms of gambling, but the tax implications and the implications in terms of broader society. As part of that research, there's also focus in terms of responsible gambling and the promotion of responsible gambling and various initiatives or measures that can be taken in terms of ensuring a responsible approach to gambling. So it's both looking at an economic understanding of the various sectors, as well as looking at a broader socioeconomic impacts of gambling on society and how we can strengthen our regulatory response to the gambling environment, as well as to try and ensure that and this will all feed into the overall modernization of the legislation so that the legislation better reflects the evolving environment of gambling. Thank you, HOT.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. It should just also be noted that DTIC had a meeting for the different provinces scheduled for May. However, the minister wrote to us to postpone it due to other urgent matters at a national level. So we are waiting for a new date as provinces so that we are able to discuss the proposed research and proposed regulatory frameworks at a national level, as that new legislation on online gambling would affect provinces and would also affect provincial revenues in this regard. So we are waiting for the new date as provinces from Minister Tau. And depending on the engagement, we will obviously keep the committee up to date in our different engagements on national gambling research as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, it is certainly quite relevant and important that we do undertake this research and gain a greater level of understanding about gambling, and particularly the levels of online gambling that are now emerging. And I think we're starting to see within the media commentary on the impact on the call it the social harms and the number of people that appear to be impacted by online gambling, and the ease with which citizens seem to be entering into that field. And certainly the comments are now coming through that if we look at the amount of money being spent on gambling in an economy where things are not going that well, and certainly that negative impact that it is having across society. So I think it is something that we need to certainly pay attention to and be looking to how it can be dealt with. And I think that the whole aspect of the level of, call it on the one hand CSI, and the other levels of education that should be undertaken. And it's good to hear that the board is busy with that level of work. But I would think that the committee generally would be very interested to gain a greater understanding of one on the research side and the remedial action and the assistance that is being provided. Members of the committee are there any further questions on the API? Member Nkondlo?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure on this matter that I think two issues for me that are a concern, and I'm sure maybe the department and the board can indicate. One is the very issue we're talking about of the overstimulation. I'm not sure whether there is any, way or data that tells us what is the level of overstimulation. And my focus once again is on youth, so that then the different interventions that have been explained that are being undertaken with Department of Education, other research, one can actually see the correlation between what data is telling you in as far as the level of overstimulation, and how you pick that up, and what are the interventions and the relevance of the interventions themselves. I'm sure if at least that could be clarified, from the board, if there is that between in the work that they are doing, whether it will be through CSI, because this is a very big issue, particularly now with the technology that has came onto stream. And I'm raising this, Chair, because if you consider, and I think one has raised this in past meetings, if you consider how the alcohol industry over time had to deal with the province actually leading a policy on alcohol harms, where they bring different stakeholders, and at least there is some type of a policy consensus currently on how what I think in the province will be called a whole of society approach, to actually understand the sources, the other causal factors, into the issue of alcohol harms, because some of it may be issues that are outside of the actual alcohol, or in this instance, actual gambling, like poverty and other matters. So I'm raising this as one a case study that is important for the board to look at what is being done within the alcohol industry, because I think the increase, one on the overstimulation and also the insult of technology, good as it is, may actually run ahead of the interventions that the board may be doing with industry. So it's important to have such. So that's the first issue I just wanted to raise. The second one, I want to understand, I think in the presentation, there is the board actually tells us that there is an issue around, I think, staffing, issue of funding. I think it's it's slide 9, I think the last bullet, which indicates that it's slide 4, actually, 97 of the posts have been approved. There are others, they are engaging with the minister. Can I understand how many are those unfunded posts, and what exactly are those specific functions? And maybe if we could be told by the minister, what could be the delay, or what could be the reasons if there isn't any decision around approving funding of those unfunded posts, as it's indicated that with this ever-changing environment, this board cannot, I'm sure, cannot afford, to not have the requisite capabilities, because we are dealing with, yes, the issues of licensing that must be undertaken, of where there is certainty in terms of licensing, but there are new areas now where that you still need to put together some type of licensing or regulation. So I think for me, it becomes a concern that there are unfunded posts, and one would just want to understand in which areas and their impact into the work of the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Mkondlo. I'm not seeing any further hands, so I think I'll hand over to the board for a response there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to ask Mr. Bennett again. I had a chance also to speak, touch a bit more on the overstimulation of gambling and on the issue of the staffing and the posts of our staff HR manager, Ms. Vani, who will follow thereafter. Thank you. First, to Mr. Bennett, please.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the overstimulation of gambling, we do believe that is at the moment also a national problem. The National Gambling Board has noticed that there has been excessive number of social media posts, as well as advertising on TV. In the Western Cape, we do not allow any of our license holders to advertise without prior board approval. So we obviously look at the content there. Obviously, we also look at the audience to make sure that it is not targeted vulnerable people. The National Gambling Board then has decided that because they need to deal with this problem nationally, they have issued instructions to the provincial licensing authorities that we need to provide them information on advertising on a quarterly basis. But speaking to some of the license holders, is that we do believe that there needs to be some curtailment in terms of the advertisement. The problem that you have at the moment is that there is a continuous licensing process, meaning that it is not a closed process, and you always continue getting new license holders on board. So when you get one of the mature license or the mature license holders, such as Hollywood and Betway, and you get a new entry into the market, these people need to start, before they can start fighting for market shares, they're fighting for their future, and they obviously just advertising wherever they can, and that is something that we have to start limiting it. The provinces are having a discussion. We have a legal and operations forum meeting where we're talking about the uniform standards on that, and that is very important because at the moment it's a lot of fragmented approach in terms of the legislation, specifically to advertising. what is permitted in one province may not be permitted in the others. And we've always indicated this, that gambling can never be advertised as a means of an income. It should be portrayed as a form of entertainment, which I think is not at the moment. And we are looking at trying to get it back. But there is an admission on our side, both from the regulated side and from the operators, is there is a bit of overstimulation that we need to start curtailing back on, and it's something that we all working on. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Ronnie, on the staffing, please.
Member Kwando, your question relating to staffing, as indicated in our presentation, 97 of the 150 positions is funded. And we are still engaging the minister in terms of funding the remaining 18 positions. I must say that there is positive progress. Funding was provided in the previous year for filling 6 new additional positions. The minister, again, this current financial year, has approved funding for additional 14 positions. And the organization is in the process of filling those positions. So there is a positive progress, and also I can mention that there is also a commitment from the minister and provincial treasury in assisting the organization to ensure that we are capacitated in order for us to execute our mandate. Of course, capacity constraint at the board has been an issue because the board's structure was last reviewed, I think about 10 years ago, and you would agree with me that there has been, the industry has grown. So we had to then conduct a review, organizational review, which resulted into 41 additional positions. Also, lastly, the point that I want to make in terms of the impact is there would be an impact if we're experiencing resource constraints, then there would be an impact on operation at the board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can maybe just add to this, Chair.
Sure.
Member Makonto, I think when we engaged the minister in PTM funding, we did look at those that we need to prioritize, which are critical, and that was the basis on which the funding has been provided. So the additional 18 posts, we are not saying they are not critical, but they are more administrative in nature, and therefore, when we had the engagement with the minister, the board has identified those positions that we need to fill as soon as possible, member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see Minister Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. There was one question for myself and the Treasury as well, so I'll just quickly deal a little bit with that. Chair, as you know, last year, and if I remember correctly, we funded 9 posts, and for this financial year, in the beginning of the budget, we funded 15, and then I think there's another portion in next year's financial year, which was previously tabled as well, but I'll ask HOD and the team just to come in there. But I just want to speak about, you know, when you appoint people and the process, because now that we've finished last year's 9 posts, we've already seen an increase in capacity. We've already seen a reduction in red tape at the board, and I'll mention a few things in a bit. And the new 15 for the financial year started now on the 1st of April. We're only in June now. So as much as we'll definitely work with the board in order to look at future capacity, but we need to fill the new positions first. We can't put new positions on the table if we're not going to fill the current ones that we filled, that we are funding for the new financial year first. So for me, the priority is that which is in the new budget, which starts for the 1st of April. We need to make sure that those are filled. We are also assisting the board we are working with our sister department of the Premier, with job evaluations for the board to assist them, because now that we are increasing the use of technology, now that we are increasing our capacity, we are also having a look at the full structure of the board and assisting them with that as well. So as much as we will 100% definitely look at what could possibly be brought into the new financial year, we also need to, and this is something I will tell every department, is we need to fill the positions for the new financial year first before we look at what is the extra over and above that. And some of the red tape that we've reduced, we've improved game approval times, and this is from feedback I received from the board at our last quarterly engagement. We've improved the game approval turnaround time by almost 50%, where it was an average of 3 to 6 months, and now it's 60 days. We've improved our patron disputes. We have appointed additional inspectors. I was informed that the patron disputes have improved by almost 50% as well. And many of the items that are left over from those patron disputes are matters that deal with, for example, Section 29 of the FIC Act, where unusual transactions must be reported to the higher authority, and legally no one shall be alerted regarding that particular report. So in terms of the FIC Act, the board follows that legislation to report to those matters. In terms of advertising, we've completely reduced the red tape. Previously, the board had to deal with individual adverts, where now the board has, and I actually received feedback, once a compliment from a stakeholder in the industry actually regarding this improvement, because the board now allows for framework. So if you submit your framework, and as long as your adverts are in line with your framework, as long as you notify the board regarding the ads that you're putting out for acknowledgement, and if you stay within the boundaries of what has been approved, then you're not going to get into trouble. But that has been reduced from 30 days to 0, because you don't need the approval for every individual one. You must just stay within the framework of what has been approved. So that's 100% reduction. This obviously reduces red tape not only for the stakeholders, but also for the board. And I do want to say that I think we are going to only now start seeing what is the impact on some of the turnaround times, even going forward over and above this, as the capacity starts increasing, because it does take time to appoint someone. You have to put adverts out, you do your shortlisting. Across departments and entities, we're seeing lots and lots of people applying for positions, so you have to apply your mind. So something that's really key for me in terms of my oversight role that I do is I want to see that the positions are being filled. And as the positions are being filled, we will still have that conversation going forward about how we can capacitate even further. But I cannot in good conscience go to the Treasury and ask for new and extra positions if I'm not comfortable seeing that the current positions are being filled. And I'm happy to, and I'm not happy, sorry, I'm committed to making sure that I do my oversight in terms of, are we filling those positions? Are we filling them quick enough? I do acknowledge that it is only the 3rd month of the new financial year, so it will take a little bit of time for the new financial year for the board to fill those positions. But we also need to do that work so that we can alleviate some of that pressure on the board. And I am happy that the board is doing that work in filling positions, and that the board is doing a lot of work in reducing red tape, but also that the board is doing a lot of work in terms of making sure that we are able to shut down those that are illegal And Chairperson, if there is anyone that know about illegal organizations operating, please do report it to the board or to us, and we'll report it to the board as well. We do a lot of work in that regard because it's good for society, but it's also good for those operators in the industry that are doing the right thing, because that also then affects those that are doing the right thing. But we also need to protect our residents. So if there's anything that needs to be reported, please do alert us, and we will deal with it accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm sure we've sort of reached the end of questions on this section. I'm not seeing any further hands. So I think at this stage, I would like to thank the entire team from the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board, both from the board members and from the executive team. Thank you for being with us. And I think we can then, at this stage, release you from this committee, and you can continue with your Friday's work. So thank you very much for being with us, and then we can move on to Provincial Treasury's presentation there. I see there is a hand from Gambling and Racing Board from the boardroom there, if you just want to make some closing comments.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to thank you for the invitation to present, and we hope we've answered questions satisfactorily, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. So I think we can just give the team a little moment there, and then we can move on and put up the presentation for PT's APP, and then we can take some questions following that. I had sort of hoped that we could conclude the first presentation within an hour, and it appears that we have done that. So I think we are doing pretty well for time. So I think over to you, Minister Bartman and HOD and your team for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to hand straight over to the team. I've spoken to length in budget votes also about some of the work that we're going to do, including the work that we're doing on alternative and blended finance, revenue enhancement, procurement, some of the work we're doing with municipalities, and even our own internal capacity. But the team is well versed and ready for the presentation for you guys. So I'll hand over to HOD. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the Chairperson and honourable members. Once again, good morning. I'm going to go through the presentation, and then the team will be able to respond to some of the questions. So we are presenting the votes APP for the 26-27 financial year, and our focus remains on strengthening governance, support service delivery, and ensure that the provincial's fiscus remain sustainable. Our next slide speaks to the key highlights for 2025-26, really indicating that we continue to build with this APP of 26-27 on a very strong institutional foundation. Maybe just to indicate, we have sustained the 12 consecutive clean audits in 25-26, strengthened our fiscal discipline through a three-phase and three-pronged approach in terms of our budget process. And we have made measurable progress in municipal financial sustainability, looking specifically at the reduction of unfunded budgets. We advance our procurement reform agenda, and that in particular speaking to the rollout of our digital systems and improved transparency in terms of our procurement disclosure reports, etc. And then we have started to look at, which Minister touched on, innovative financing approaches, including alternative and blended finance. So we have been deliberate in terms of our work towards a capable and adaptive fiscal system. And that is basically what the slide is trying to demonstrate, also looking at then our digital transformation and our data-driven governance implemented and our BI dashboards. And I think a great achievement for us is the fact that 34% of our procurement spend is on women-owned businesses. Our next slide just speaks to our vision, Chair. So the department remains guided by our vision and really looking at the challenge of being an enabler that is both responsive and inclusive, and that contributes to improving the lives of the resident, which touched on what the Auditor General is also stating as its objective. And really focusing then on resident-centered governance, sustainable service delivery, as well as innovation and adaptability. And the type of projects that follows will, as I will deal with later on in the presentation, will speak to each of these areas. In terms of our governance system, the slide just reflects our journey over time. And what we can see is that the system has progressed from compliance-based orientation towards institutionalized good governance. And now we want to continuously and increasingly shift towards governance that delivers measurable results. And for us, it means that we're moving beyond oversight as a control function, and we need to, as indicated previously, have put ourselves a very ambitious target by saying we want to look at integration, coordination, but also performance across departments and municipalities. So where are we at this particular point in time? Very importantly, that speaks to the shift that I have alluded to previously. Firstly, and I'm going to deal with it in terms of three areas: budgeting, fiscal, as well as our governance perspective. We are obviously in year 2 of the strategic plan. And so from a budgeting perspective, where we just reflect on it, is the fact that we are strengthening our integrated planning and budgeting across the 2 spheres to ensure that allocations are aligned to outcomes and spatial priorities. From a fiscal perspective, emphasizing and reinforcing sustainability by looking at our expenditure management, improving our cash flow planning, as well as then looking at revenue diversification and the innovative financing instruments. And then from a governance perspective, we are advancing supply chain reform and also supporting the progressive improvement of governance maturity across institutions. So that is just our journey thus far and where we find ourselves. This slide speaks to our strategy as it aligns to the PSP, and also then supported obviously through an HR strategy that speaks to capability, capacity, and well-being, but punting again the importance of integration and coordination and being resident focus. And the key priorities include, for us, in terms of the integrated provincial governance as well as effective local government, speaking to our 2 main areas in terms of the role that we need to play in both the PFMA and MFMA space. Overarching, our focus area in particular, because of the fact that we're dealing with wanting to look at impact and performance, it is on strategic supply chain management. And then the second focus area for us is around efficient infrastructure investment, which then speaks to if we look at it across the various portfolio and focus areas within the PSB, we then can align it to those quite directly. Our levers is really looking at capacity building and talent management, as well as information communication and technology, underpinned by obviously our knowledge management system on which everything that we're trying to achieve is built on. So we can move in terms of the our initiatives. We are showing this also, but let me start with from the top. I've already indicated our space in terms of legislation, but also in terms of our governance framework, which then cuts across the various priority areas as well as our focus areas. And also then we're saying governance is everybody's business. It's not located within one specific area. So that also then cuts across. We are then looking at, when we look at integrated provincial governance, we're just trying to highlight some of the key interventions. It's not a comprehensive list, but it's highlighting what for us is key, and that speaks to integrated provincial governance, effective local government, our strategic supply chain management, as well as infrastructure investment. And I'm not necessarily going through the various areas, but safe to say, I think everybody that is the entire provincial treasury is involved in all of these areas, and we will unpack them further when we get to the various projects later on. Just in terms of our provincial strategic plan. So I've already indicated our role as an enabler, that must ensure that planning, budgeting, and implementation are aligned, that our resources are directed towards the priority areas, and that we need to then also look at strengthening governance and support our delivery systems across the various sectors. This positioning is critical for us to achieve our broader provincial outcomes, particularly in relation to growth and jobs. When we look at the IC&G flagship, and because this is the space that the vote in particular finds itself and plays a particular role in terms of our innovation, culture, and governance. And the slide simply depicts our role in terms of innovation, where we have the alternative and blended financing that we are pursuing there. Then in terms of integration and collaboration, particularly the budget process, which is collaborative and integrated, and also then looking at both from a PFMA and MFMA perspective. And then more in terms of our not necessarily lead, but how we land our own HR strategy within the broader focus area of culture and people-driven, centric-driven delivery. And in particular, what we have adopted in terms of Minister's campaign being Home for Dinner, and how we're trying to deal with both capacity, capability, and well-being in a holistic manner in order for us to give effect to this particular area. And then in terms of futures thinking, evidence-informed decision-making is really around the evidence. And there was a big shift in our budget circular and how we communicated that budget, and also in terms of the research that we put in the system, both from a Mero and a Pero perspective. But how do people, how do departments and organs of state use that information to better plan, and then also to have, also look at the responsiveness of the various budgets that's being tabled at both spheres. If that research is taken into consideration. And then lastly, ease of doing government. So what is an established flagship there is the e-procurement system. We are, earlier we had the gambling board there, so we are also exploring or supporting the gambling board, just looking at how then do we and some of the examples Minister also raised, and that was coming from the board, is how then do we support the board in terms of making it easier for the resident or the punter to engage with government as a whole in relation to that particular matter, which includes legislation reviews, revising or making processes much more streamlined and modernizing some of the systems that we are dealing with. Our next slide is zooming into innovation, culture, and governance, but specifically in terms of the flagships, wanting to just highlight some to the committee. So in terms of the revenue enhancement strategy and our investment there in particular, we're looking at maximizing existing sources. We are exploring new sources, and then obviously we're looking at alternative and blended financing, and that is really moving from the pipeline discussion to transaction structuring of financial and non-financial instruments. And at the bottom, we're just trying to show some of the alignment that we can see coming out of there. And then in the second instance, it is about our collaborative integrated planning, budgeting, and development. And that is about the alignment of provincial and municipal planning instruments to improve credibility, strategic impact across spheres, and that enables joint up assurance across planning, budgeting, implementation, and reporting. And then in terms of our ease of doing government, our flagship is the e-procurement solution there, and that is the digitization in terms of the end-to-end SCM process that ultimately with the aim to improve efficiency, transparency, and the supply experience when they engage with Western Cape government and its institutions within that space. If I can just move on to the program overview, and we can move on to just highlighting per program some of the indicators that we have that speaks to our performance. So the work of the department is implemented through 4 programs, which is supported by 63 performance indicators. And these indicators are then designed to track fiscal performance, strengthen governance, support municipalities, as well as improve supply chain and financial systems. And we believe that it provides a comprehensive and measurable approach to delivery. I'm just going to quickly touch on the various outcomes as it relates to the 4 programs, and also trying to show the area in which, if we look at our enabler and how we position ourselves in terms of the PSP, where these initiatives then is aligned to which area within the PSP, and also speaking to which of the values, because we need to take the ministerial values also into consideration. So it's just trying to show that alignment with those particular areas. So in terms of strategic outcome 1, our aim is to strengthen financial and corporate governance to ensure a well-managed department that empowers programs to achieve their mandates. And we're just trying to show with the bubbles the budget allocation per annum over the MTF. So the focus here is on strategic coordination, systems digitization, as well as financial and risk controls. And then obviously within strategic outcome 1, it is about the staff within the provincial treasury, and we're trying then to link it back with our overall strategy that speaks to capacity, capability, and well-being, that then talks to our goal of having staff at home for dinner with their families. And that then tries to both that speaks to our recruitment, our whole HR strategy, and really trying to create an environment and a culture where people feel connected to the organization. In terms of our strategic outcome 2, it speaks to issues around fairness, trust, as well as innovation. And for us here, it remains the core of Treasury's fiscal mandate. So it drives budget formulation and oversight, fiscal policy, municipal financial sustainability, and infrastructure financing, but also the budgeting, the planning, as well as the implementation. So the program is central to maintaining a stable and credible fiscal framework for the province. And one can then see what the allocations are there for each year, as well as the key initiatives that we've listed there at the bottom. If we move to strategic outcome 3, which then speaks to critical importance, issues around or highlighting issues around value for money and again innovation. We have the budget there, but the emphasis is on improving procurement performance for the strategic outcome, leveraging digital tools, as well as enhancing data and transparency. That is then what we have in terms of our strategic outcome 3. If we move to strategic outcome 4, which speaks to trust and value for money in particular, and that is really looking at governance transformation in departments, entities, and municipalities. And our goal there is obviously to improve it. And these key areas include financial management practices, audit readiness and reporting, and in particular our role that we've played there in terms of the consistency workshops that had its birth and its origin in the Western Cape, and with the results that we've been getting here, we now we're collaborating with the National Treasury, and this year we Gauteng Treasury is also on board in terms of that. So there's a momentum, and really the aim is what we're doing in the Western Cape and what we're trying to do here, that we duplicate that and really ensure that everybody, that South Africa as a whole can benefit from the from some of what we perceive to be good practices, and what I think what National Treasury has also now seen as a good practice and rolling out to everybody else. So our key areas include financial management, audit readiness, and institutional capacity. And the aim here is to progressively strengthen governance maturity across the system. I think the committee can appreciate the fact that lots of things happen. Obviously, if we were living in a cocoon, then I think all things will remain equal and it will be smooth sailing. But we all know we are living in this is reality and things happen. And so there is a measure of resilience that is built in and that is implied in what we're doing and what I've shared across all strategic outcomes. And so that is also an area that we are really looking at, because it doesn't mean that we have all of these things, that everything will work perfectly. In conclusion, Chairperson, for us, the APP represents a coordinated plan that responds to our mandate and our strategy. And whilst we're trying to strengthen governance and delivery capacity, and for us, Chair, our role is to continue to be a steward of public finances, really be a system integrator, as well as an enabler of sustainable service delivery. Chair, and that brings me to the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much to HOD for that presentation. I think there were certain aspects there that when coming through, and I think the breakdown of the approach and the outcomes, I think, are very encouraging, and I think it's been well presented. I'm handing over now to members of the committee for any questions that you would like to address to HOD and the Provincial Treasury team. I see Member Mkondlo. You can go ahead.
Chair, can I just understand from the department, perhaps I missed it in the presentation, on the strategic focus of this financial year. One is the work on the alternative funding models, given the current economic challenges we're seeing of a constrained economy, but also the impact of climate change. I'm not sure. I think in the House yesterday, I think this issue would have came up about, I think from Minister Simmons, about, you know, the limitations in the current disaster funding that only funds post disaster, but not disaster preparation. And I'm not sure, and Treasury having to intervene sometimes and use the provincial reserves. So I'm interested to understand how that work of just financing, because we've been talking about this thing of you know, alternative financing, because since COVID, it was very clear that public finance has been impacted, and we're going to have to rethink, you know, about public financing. So without being a mud throwing between province and national, my interest is the work that was started by the department on alternative financing. Where is that work? What is going to be? What's the priority of the trajectory of that work in this particular financial year, particularly as it relates to climate change funds? Because these are some of the things that we're seeing, whether it's seeing floods or we're going to be seeing droughts once the floods have left. So that's the first issue, Chair. The second issue, again, I asked the question about this notion of us having to sit with APPs post, and Auditor General says to us that part of their expectation or part of what is their view is we need to engage with APPs before they are concluded. And my assumption is that when they come at this point, it's more noting because there's nothing that we can do. And I'm not sure how prudent is that in allowing us as Parliament to do our work as the legislature of ensuring that issues that gets to be concluded, even with budgets, you know, have got also views, you know, of those that have been elected. That is Parliament. And I think that is an issue that we must be able to discuss and deal with, to better ensure that Parliament is not reduced to a rubber stamping exercise when it comes to APP's budgets and the likes. So I'm raising this, Chair, because it is important as we sit now here. Part of the issue with the municipalities that are under financial recovery, as one example. One thing I would like the department to tell us is the extent to which they speak about the work that they would be doing to ensure that municipalities, you know, do this and this and participate, monitor, that they ensure reports are written. One of the things that the department has told us is that whilst they would do, I just forgot the name of those reports that they would be doing to the municipalities, the truth of the matter is that those reports are not necessarily they can't tell municipalities. I think that's the long and short of it. They can't tell municipalities. And now we've got a situation where municipalities fall into a situation of financial problems. Is there any way of any other mechanism that could actually be able to help provincial government with treasury, with municipalities, so that when red flags are put up long before we get into a financial recovery system, is there anything, and I'm asking in context of the work that they are doing on local government budgeting. So is there something of that nature that they could actually maybe share with us in trying to improve, so that we try and avoid getting into those situations of financial recovery, which takes longer and have got direct impact on service delivery to the citizens in the different municipalities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. Then I'm handing over to Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chair. Am I audible, Chair?
You're audible. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, let me first appreciate the presentation from the department. Chair, my input is based on the governance issue, the financial sustainability of the municipalities. I know Member Nkondlo touched on it, but I think it's also necessary, I must raise this issue. And that my question is emanating from the AG report of last week in the committee. A lot of, we have noticed on the AG report, a lot of our municipalities is in yellow. It was in yellow there, although they have only highlighted nice municipalities. And if you look into one of the issues that the AG also highlighted there, it was the issue of unfunded budget, and where I will be able to couple that with the program overview, the term of value for money. Now, when you have municipalities at this stage, on this stage, they still have is working with unfunded budgets. There's no way there will be value for money to the consumers or the communities of that specific municipality. And I want to check from the department in terms of, because my belief is that national, when he allocated money to the province or the municipalities, he allocated money for all municipalities. And I believe that it's only fair for municipalities to get their fair shares and not work with unfunded budgets. So the issue of unfunded budget, I will condemn it by all with the highest level. So I wanted to check also with the department, what are they going to do in terms of these municipalities with an unfunded budget? And then also, we are talking about, or the department is talking about effective local government. When they talk about effective local government, what are they referring to? Because China, we are sitting with, as Member Nkondlo indicated, that municipalities under FRP. And this FRP is coming for very long. Now, during that sitting of the AG, you will find that the AG, what its findings, the province got its own findings. And these findings doesn't speak to each other. It doesn't speak to each other. The financial recovery plan, even in the quarterly report of the municipalities, there was something else being mentioned. Whilst the AG was very specific in terms of its findings. And to me, it's a worrying factor. I have raised it with the AG during that sitting, and I'm still raising it. The reports doesn't speak to each other, and that should be looked into. And then also my last one, Chair, is that in terms of the budgeting of municipalities, you will find that some municipalities, they doesn't meet the time frame of the budget submitted to the province. And that is also a contribution for that municipalities to fall at the end of the day into this financial recovery plan. Now, what is the department doing in terms of improving that so that most of the municipalities started to comply in terms of due dates for their budgeting to avoid this incompatibility towards the consumer in the various municipalities. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Stoffel. I think just it's important that we sort of try and get our questions fairly concise and fairly direct, so that we don't perhaps lose anything in terms of the overall response that we would like to get. Member Nkondlo, I'm just looking to see if there are any other hands. I think you can go ahead, Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe, Chair, you would have to then help us to indicate what in your view is concise. Perhaps we may be missing in our presentations to be concise. Maybe you would have to help us what that means in practical terms when one is engaging. Chair, there are two things, and I would like perhaps the Minister and the Department to help us understand. One of the things that one assumes, and if incorrect, I'm sure the Department could help, is that part of the role of this particular provincial treasury is to help us realize, in this instance, the growth strategy from a fiscal point of view. And I'm interested to hear that with the current reality, I think with the current Minister of Economic Development, he did mention in the House that actually our projections that we've done towards, I think, 2030 in terms of the growth of this economy will have to be revised, including the job numbers. So I would be interested from a fiscal point of view, Minister, to understand how will this impact the fiscal situation of the province. So I think it is just one issue I thought I just needed to add, just to get a clarity on your side, because one would assume that this is an issue that you are sitting with, because the intention was always to finance a growth strategy that takes us to where, through the G4J would want to arrive at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. I see Member Masipa. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning once again to Minister and the officials from the department. Chair, my question really relates to the kind of the governance framework in terms of how the the provincial treasury is working with national to achieve this ambitious plan of this blended finance. Because, Chair, as you will understand, that we are sitting with disaster, but not only with disaster, but we are sitting with projects like the Tigerberg Hospital, as one project that need finalization. And obviously it's not really having the finance to finance it quicker and get it out of the way as quick as we would want to. But we'll also want to deal with the economic issues that came as a result of the disaster. So maybe, my question to the provincial treasury is, how can we as a committee really kind of help in terms of really ensuring that this governance structure that the minister is working within is really able to ensure that, this ambitious plan of ensuring that we have got a blended finance that is working and that will really help achieve some of the challenges that the province obviously face, which are really of high magnitude. So, yeah, I think the question is, how can we as members of this particular committee kind of assist this ambitious plan from the Provincial Treasury Chair? That's my question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Msipa. I think at this stage I'm going to hand over to Minister and HOD and the Provincial Treasury team for responses to those various questions that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll try to bite part of the cherry and then I'll hand over to the team for especially the more technical items. I'll just quickly deal with alternative and blended finance more broadly, and then I'll also speak a bit on disasters. So if we go back a few months to the budget tabling, at the time we were also responding to disasters. We were responding in that budget to drought, to foot and mouth disease, to water and energy resilience because of also predictions both from the Weather Service SA, but as well as the fact that we would like to reduce independence regarding Eskom and the strain on the grid. We also responded in the main budget regarding gender-based violence. So those were the main ones. We also responded in terms of the fires that we experienced. For example, in the main budget, we responded to the fire at the Paarl Hospital and the impact there. So we saw that response. We then kept some funding in the reserve, and this is not new information. This information that was tabled previously. So for this financial year, you know that we kept 500 million in the unforeseen and unavoidable reserve. So let's quickly just talk about the disasters. Last week, I think it was a week and a half ago, when we had a debate in the Provincial Parliament. And at that time, there was an estimated impact of disasters on our provincial and municipal infrastructure of 8.5 billion rand estimate. That estimate now stands at 9.1 billion rand in assessments, and the assessments are still underway. That means that we have 500 million for this financial year in the reserve, and we're only in June, month 3. We're actually halfway in month 3 of the financial year, knowing very well that winter has only started, and we often have fires during fire season in the summer season. So we're only in month 3, and we already had this disaster. The scale of this disaster is absolutely astronomical. And just to put it into context, the whole infrastructure department budget for this financial year is 10 billion rand. The whole budget. Now, if you have disasters at 9.1 billion rand, then we can all see that logic dictates that we are not able to respond at the level that we would like to respond at from a provincial level with the type of funding that we require. Now, the disaster process, that's a legal process that we follow first through DLG and COCTA before it gets to National Treasury, and we liaise with DLG and work with them on this particular process. That process first assessments, those goes to COCTA, and the team can give some more detail on the technical matters that COCTA require from us. And then once it passes through COCTA, the funding approval and application then goes to National Treasury. And you would have seen that Premier has communicated from the Cabinet yesterday that we will be seeking audience with the Minister of Finance nationally to discuss the impact that disasters have had on our province. Limpopo has also been affected by disasters. Mpumalanga has also been affected by disasters earlier this year. So the level of disasters that South Africa is experiencing, it is truly astronomical. And we need to consider a few things. One of the things that we really do need to consider at a national level is reforming our disaster approval and funding process so that provinces and municipalities are able to access disaster funding even further. Because currently what is happening is when you are dealing with a disaster, you have to respond immediately. And we want to protect lives and we want to protect livelihoods. And the way the disaster process is set up is that when you submit your assessment, when you get funding, it is retrospective. So you would have already spent the money. So whether or not you have this wonderful program that you've now tabled in March with the budget and your roads infrastructure program and your housing infrastructure program, your programs in agriculture, and I can go through every department in this manner. But that has now been affected because you have to respond immediately to disasters. What that does mean for us is, yes, in terms of a province, we will have to respond because that is the purpose also of our unforeseen and unavoidable. So we will have to respond. And once the assessments and verification is completed, as a Treasury, we will then assess those, but we also need to submit the matters to COCTA for approval and then National Treasury. At a national level, we also need to consider exploring self-insurance for certain sectors particularly, because unfortunately, government can't fund private property. And when I speak about private property, I refer both to residents as well as more commercial property. We focus on our public infrastructure, like our schools, like our hospitals, like our roads, and so on. So we do need to consider self-insurance because if your livelihood, if your home has been washed away, what are we going to do going forward in South Africa to help you build back better? So that is a serious conversation at the national level we need to have about self-insurance. We also need to consider insurance-linked products. What are those products, both for households and for the commercial sectors, that we can have a conversation with the insurance sector broader to say that if we do these things to mitigate the impacts of climate change, that insurance will also maybe be more affordable for people, but also that they are able to get insurance for these type of matters. Because I can tell you now, with all of these escalating disasters, it's going to become much more difficult being able to access insurance, given that the way that the weather is changing in our country. We also need to and I will also raise this with Finman at our next budget council. We need to make sure that our weather service nationally is adequately funded in order to assist us with accurate predictions and making sure that we get notifications and alerts in time so that we're able to work with communities in this regard, especially if we have to evacuate. So I do believe that we need to have a look at the funding for the weather service nationally and whether they are adequately funded. But it will have to be a whole of government and a whole of society approach. The level of this disaster, there's no one government that will be able to fund everything. National, provinces, and municipalities, we will all have to come to the party to put funding on the table. Separate to that, we will also have to work with the private sector because we will not be able to build back everything. And we must be honest with ourselves about that. We must be realistic with ourselves about that. Because also, if we say the words that we're going to be building back better, that means we will have to plan for a different way of building so that we are able to build back better. And we all know that when you take that time to say, okay, if we're going to have to consider different things, for example, and I'm just using Eskom now as an example, if your pylon was able to withstand 140 kilometers per hour for wind, but the wind is now 160 kilometers per hour and your pylon is falling over, then we will have to consider what do we need to change in our country so that pylons are able to withstand 160 kilometers per hour of wind. It is the weather that we're experiencing now is not the weather that we experienced previously, so we have to think differently. On the alternative and blended finance. So we do assist all departments with mechanisms that are most appropriate for them. But the departments, we also consider them the experts on their particular sector. So departments must also put together their proposals of what needs to be done. We are also assisting municipalities, and we've already had engagement with the MMCs for finance, MMs, CFOs. We raise it at our provincial budget and governance forums with them. We've had 2 sessions on alternative and blended finance with the MMCs of finance already. Municipalities that don't have MMCs or finance, their mayors were in attendance. And we also raise these matters at our min-mayors as well. So municipalities are more than welcome to submit proposals for alternative and blended finance should they require our help. For example, the Department of Infrastructure, you would know we created an alternative and blended finance reserve, and we've put funding from our motor vehicle licenses into that reserve in the beginning of the year, because the reason you have motor vehicle licenses is you need to use that for roads. So the aim there was to use that to service our future borrowings when we eventually go to market for our roads infrastructure portfolio. But the disasters, I must admit, has put a spanner in the works, because the reserve and what we want to go to market was supposed to help accelerate our economy and accelerate our roads program in that regard. But when you're dealing with disasters, you're also now building back better. So we will have to sit with the Department of the Infrastructure. There's a real possibility that it would delay some of that work a little bit, because we now have to rethink that work. But we're going to have to ask ourselves, okay, where do we prioritize to move the economy further the fastest? And what will unfortunately have to be delayed? You would also know that some of the 2023 flood disaster impact, we're only completing some of that portfolio work now, because you don't build back within a day. It takes time to build back. So it will delay the portfolios, and we do ask that we are realistic and that we are patient with one another as a province to say, if we're going to be building back, some things, unfortunately, especially the new things, might be delayed in this regard. But we are working with DOI on alternative and blended finance, particularly for our roads program. We're also working with the World Bank in this regard to be able to make sure that the finance mechanism that we're putting into place, that we're going to market with, is appropriate in this regard. We're also working with the National Treasury and the World Bank on a credit guarantee vehicle, and all things remaining equal, we hope that that work will be concluded soon in this financial year, and we will give updates as there are new developments in this regard. And the impact of that, especially for our energy sectors, especially for our logistics and transport sectors, especially for our water sectors, will really be that it would also help bring down the costs of doing business with government. And it will also assist in things like, for example, the Tygerberg PPP. I'll quickly move to DLG. We're assisting also, they are doing work on the CDF program, where they're assisting municipalities on how we can do municipal pooled financing. And that is really some game-changing work that DLG is doing in terms of the CDF program. And obviously, I've already spoken about some of the insurance-linked products and self-insurance that we will be engaging national on as well. In the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, we've tabled previously that we supporting them in the research that they are doing on biodiversity credit schemes, and they have received some development funding in terms of that also previously. Putting a credit scheme together, however, does take time, because they have to create the finance mechanism, but that work is already underway. In the main budget, we've also funded some of the technical work that they needed to do for BFI applications that they need to put together, that they want to do for projects, particularly in waste. For health specifically, questions were asked regarding the Tygerberg Hospital. On the Triple P, I'll ask the team just to give some feedback because I know that we're assisting them on their procurement for the Triple P, but that is moving forward in this regard. And on the other BFI application funding that they got, they now need to also now put together the applications for the construction. So we know that health is underway already with putting those business plans together so that we can submit those. So BFI for departments are definitely still an option, and we are supporting health in that process. So from our side, we will assist them once we receive those business applications so they can go to national. We are also assisting health with the revenue in terms of making sure that we assist them with their billing systems, but as well as recovery of debt from the road accident fund. And you will have noticed in the past year that there's actually been an increase in the road accident fund paying the health department back. So we are quite, I would say, cautiously optimistic. I would say in terms of the RIF debt recovery. On agriculture, I've already spoken a bit about self-insurance. And we are also supporting them in some of the work regarding development, financing and access to capital. And that's mostly in the private sector for private investment so that agriculture can link up the different sectors with access to capital and financing. In social development, we supported them and continue to support them with the Cape Care Fund. I know DDAT, we supported them in the main budget with funding for the entrepreneurship fund. And all of these items are also in the main budget overview documentation as well. On the growth, 100%, Mayor said that growth would have to be revised. And some of the things that affected growth within this financial year, but also in the previous financial year, previously was tariffs. But we also see now this year that the conflict, the Iran-US conflict will have an impact. We've already seen this impact coming through on things like fuel across different countries and inflation. We've already seen the impact coming through there. I think everyone can see that the disasters will definitely have an impact on our economy as well. And I'll just ask the team just to maybe give an explanation on how we do the modeling and how those forecasts get included into our tablings. And we usually table those forecasts or amended forecasts during MTBPS as well as the main budgets. On the financial sustainability, I'll just ask the team to highlight the projects where we're supporting municipalities with, including those within the grant funding, unfunded budgets as well. But 100%, the first question I have when a municipality has an unfunded budget is, why do you have an unfunded budget? Why are you budgeting more than what you have? You have an MM, you have a CFO, you have departments with officials that are supposed to assist you with budgeting and putting a budget together. The council has to approve a budget. So what is the council doing in terms of that oversight of the budget? Why are you approving unfunded budgets in your councils? But I'll also ask the team just to speak about the process and the work that we do with municipalities on assessing budgets, on giving advice on the Simon time process as well. On the time frame of budgets submitted to province, almost all municipalities have adopted budgets on time. Municipalities can legally ask for permission to table at a later stage, but you must give a reason. So we don't just approve later tabling just because you want to do it later. You have to justify why you are not able to table in time. And I'll ask the team just to give feedback. For example, we gave the City of Cape Town permission to table in June, because they have to take into account the impact of the court case. So they have to incorporate that into their budget process, but also they had to go and advertise so that people are able to give comments on the adjustments as well. So I'll just ask the team to give some feedback on timeframes. On the FRPs, I'm not specifically sure what the member was referring to, Chairperson, but maybe if those items that are considered different could just be submitted to us. I know the purpose of an FRP report and the purpose of an audit report is a little bit different, but maybe if we can get the specific information so we can have a look at it and respond to the committee. And then I'm going to hand over to HOD and the team for the more difficult technical questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the Chair. I think Minister dealt with all the technical questions, but let me start by saying, and in no particular order, because I think the questions on alternative and the budgets and the linkages with G4J in terms of the disaster, I think the Minister covered those. But I think it's important that we remain cognizant of the fact that we have 30 municipalities. And when we start to talk about those that are in distress or that is not doing as well, then it's really the minority or small grouping of those municipalities. Is definitely not the majority, and it links to what we have as our target, which is the effective local government, which we in how we articulate the priority speaks to the system. It speaks to the entire system of local government, municipalities, councils, etc., and how successfully these entities then deliver services that meets the community needs. And so when I think the difference for us and the AG would also be where we look at a system, their approach might be, and I don't have the detail as ministers indicated, when they perhaps look at it, they look at a sample, and our focus is on is perhaps broader, not perhaps broader, definitely broader in terms of the system. So it would be good to quite get a better understanding of where exactly there is a marked difference between what we have put out and what the AG is putting forward. Then just I would want Stephen just to come in to maybe just elaborate a little bit more in terms of the unfunded budgets. And then we do have a technical team together with our infrastructure unit, but also on the supply chain side of it. Because PPPs is a form of procurement that actually has been part of the technical engagements with the Department of Health on the PPP. So I'm going to ask Isaac, I don't know if Santi is online, but Isaac, maybe just to start off, and if there's anything that Ziad and the team would like to add, then Ziad can just add. But there has been specific work, and I think that was a specific question that was raised. So maybe we can start with the municipalities, Stephen. And thank you.
Thanks very much, HOD. Yes, I think you and the Minister have covered a lot of it already. Just on the timing of tabled and adopted budgets, that's right. We have granted an extension on the tabling of the budgets. There was a vacancy in Oudtshoorn that meant that the council was unable to meet in time to table by the end of March. So they applied to us for an extension there. So that was one. And then the other one, as the Minister already highlighted, was the City of Cape Town. There was also a late adoption in Kannaland. They adopted a week late, but that is that they used a mechanism that is provided for in the MFMA. They met within the deadline and then chose to meet again a week later, which is a provision as I said, that is provided for in the MFMA. On the unfunded budgets, yes, I think I really want to emphasize the point that the HOD made that, it's a minority of municipalities that are suffering from unfunded budgets. Across the Western Cape, we're very proud of how well our municipalities do and how well they perform in terms of establishing cost-reflective tariffs and then collecting those so that they are financially sustainable and can continue to deliver services. Because that's at the core of tabling a funded budget is having credible revenue. And the easiest way to lose your funded budget status is to not collect the revenue that you plan to. So we place a big emphasis in this province on making sure that municipalities collect. And although we see, a number of municipalities fall just below the 95% norm that National Treasury sets, that is quite an ambitious norm. The vast majority of our municipalities consistently, month after month, collect more than 90% of their revenue, of their billed revenue. Even in Eskom supplied areas, we have relatively high collection rates, and I think the challenges in those areas are well known. So municipalities, even in a difficult environment, still collect most of their revenue, and that ensures that most of them have funded budgets. Where we have, we then do a lot of work in the assessment of budgets, and I think one of the members was asking about the SIME process, the Strategic Integrated Municipal Engagements. I think that was maybe the name the member was searching for. And those, I think there was a question about what we can do to help make sure that municipalities, when we see red flags in those kind of processes and the work we do in that, in our engagements with municipalities, we are, for example, in the SIME process, looking at the tabled budgets of municipalities and making recommendations on those before they're adopted. So we saw this year, for example, a number of municipalities that had tabled budgets that were at risk of being unfunded, and we made detailed recommendations. We have good working relations with most of those municipalities, and they took those recommendations. We're now in the process of assessing whether they did sufficient work to get those over the line to a funded budget position. But that's the kind of work that we're doing. Sometimes it's reducing expenditure, sometimes it's revenue collection measures, etc. But that's a lot of it, and that's how we ended up last year. We managed to get. We had 6 municipalities previously that had unfunded budgets in the 2024 budgets. In the adopted 2025 budgets, it was only 3. And I think, the strongest measure that we have as a province to, in the existing laws, the strongest measure we have to address failing municipalities is an intervention in terms of Section 139 of the Constitution. And that's exactly what we applied in those 3 municipalities that had unfunded budgets last year. All of those also met the criteria for an intervention. And so we had intervened in Beaufort West, Kannaland, and Theewaterskloof, as I think members are well aware. And with, as I say, this year, we are still assessing the final adopted budgets to see which municipalities, whether there's an increase in the number of unfunded budgets or not, and we'll report on that in due course. I hope I've covered it, HOD.
Indeed, thank you, Stephen, Isaac, and then Seattle, Annalise. Okay.
Yeah, just from my side. So as indicated, that there are various components involved with the Triple P. I will just give some feedback in terms of the latest meeting that we had with the Department of Health. So part of the Triple P is also to ensure that there's social upliftment, empowerment that's built into the tender specifications. So we had sessions with the Department of Health, and have a look at it and indicated some of the areas that needs to be strengthened. So we will have another session in the first week of July, because the social upliftment and empowerment section as part of the Triple P is very important, because it's part of the economic upliftment. And of course, the alignment with the growth for job strategy also then becomes important. So at this particular stage, we now, engaging with the department of that part of the tender document. And once that is finalized, they will then be ready to approach the market. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone from Public Finance? Let me just see.
HOD, if I may?
Yes,
Just to
yeah,
comment what
most
Isaac just said.
certainly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So just on the current status of the Tigerberg Triple P, it's currently in the procurement phase, which is phase 3 of the 6 phases in a typical Triple P project. At the end of the stage, all of the procurement documentation should be finalized. And the end of this phase typically results in Treasury Approval 2A, which the department is targeting for April 2027. And this is where the request for proposals will be issued. Thereafter, they'll go into phase 4, which is the development phase. The department is targeting completion of this stage by March 2028. By the end of this phase, typically bids are received and reviewed before going into the final phase, before delivery, which is phase 5. And that's where the contract documentation will be drafted. So Treasury Approval 3 would typically be the end kind of control point of the delivery phase. And this is scheduled for the end of 2028, which is when the Triple P will achieve financial close and construction can commence thereafter. It is important to note that these timelines can change based on the engagements of National Treasury and kind of the detailed technical discussions that will be held with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies there, I was struggling with my unmute button. Thank you very much for those responses, comprehensive responses on the various questions that that have been raised. Over to you, members. Do we have any further questions, or are we getting to the end of our various questions that we have? I see Member Nkondlo's hand is up.
Chair, thank you very much for the responses. And I'm sure we are going to have to come back with the department, I think, as part of this APP, to really dive in onto this discussion of, the financing in this constrained environment, with all what Minister was raising, the engagements they are having with National Treasury, so that we are, as they would say, which we are future-proof, not because we believe that there's going to be a time where we've got equal resources to what are the demands, but I think how we help navigate and manage the shocks, I think, in the system. So maybe we're going to have to come back to that conversation so that we are better equipped, but also updated on those processes. The one issue, I think, the notion of the signaling of the financial situation of municipalities, I think, once again, is an area that I believe we need to come back to before we get into financial recovery. And I think colleagues must always understand that whilst we appreciate that in as far as comparison to other provinces, the Western Cape proven has got better performance in their municipalities. That when we come here to the committee and we're asking the question, does not necessarily become a response we are asking for when we ask about certain municipalities that are on financial recovery, because we want to maintain a standard where those municipalities are not at that level, because it has got direct impact on citizens in those municipalities that are currently on financial recovery. And the discussion is important amongst ourselves with the advice and technical information and data pointed by the department to say, what is it, as Member Masipa was asking earlier, what is it that we could do as legislatures, you know, to try and assist citizens, because we're here for citizens. Citizens not to get to that particular situation. What is it that we need to do amongst ourselves? The last two issues I want to raise, Chair. One is on this issue of cost-reflective tariffs. We're sitting with the City of Cape Town as we speak, with a court ruling on a matter taken by citizens. On municipalities, we are saying we are happy as the provincial department that our municipalities are implementing cost-reflective tariffs. And how do you explain that when our biggest and one of the populous municipalities in our metro here is sitting at this point with a court ruling that proves that statement incorrect? And actually, as we speak now, again, if you consider the current budgets of municipalities, listen to those budget discussions and let's listen to the outcries, not only of the politicians through political parties in those municipalities, the outcries of different stakeholders and including the middle class, the very people, as I think the colleague was saying, municipalities must be able, you know, to collect revenue, you know, as one of the indicators. And we know, because of the current environment of the economic climate that we're in, the very residents, including businesses, are not coping. So we cannot speak as if those issues do not have a direct impact on the revenue base of municipalities. And therefore, cost-reflective tariffs must also be responsive to that reality. And at this point, municipalities haven't. The same way that they would be fighting with ESCOM, with ESCOM and NERSA, you know, on tariffs that are not necessarily taking into cognizance their own environment. They have not been doing that when it comes to the very citizens and businesses from which they draw that. So I'm not understanding this conversation of cost-reflective tariffs, because between Treasury and what is happening in the municipalities, seemingly somebody is not listening to what is happening on the ground. And how do we then get to that particular point? How do we resolve this particular tension? And it's not a tension that we are 100% in control of, because it is a function of the performance of the economy. But what my understanding of a cost reflective, it must be reflective indeed of the inflation, of how people are being affected, you know, so that they are able to pay for services. So I think this is also one issue that for me becomes important to get clarity from the department. How do we reconcile the very court judgment of the City of Cape Town and the issues that are being raised from municipalities about, you know, tariffs, setting of tariffs by municipalities with at most one? It does not include the voices of the public, because the public feels that municipalities are not giving them, you know, a sufficient input into the process of putting up tariffs. So this is an issue that I'm interested to know. How is the provincial treasury able to say we are happy with our municipalities? They are implementing cost-reflective tariffs. So I think that is an issue, Chair, that I would like to make as part of my last comments. Lastly, is to say, in as far as the infrastructure budget is concerned, I'm not sure. The last time, I'm sure in the quarterly reports, we would have been told that, I think, including both at the level of human resource of that function that is responsible to assist from the Treasury to manage the budget, to the infrastructure budget. I'm just wanting to understand, in this APP and in this financial year, what becomes our of the focus of that in ensuring that that infrastructure budget that we are approving and putting up there on one, it delivers the goods in this sense. One, the developmental objectives of getting people and getting us jobs, getting small businesses participating in the economy, but also bringing on board more private sector participation, into public infrastructure. So I'm interested whether now are we at a comfortable level that provincial treasury with that function, we are able, we are sufficiently resourced, with that function in the structure of the department to ensure that that work that it needs to do to monitor the infrastructure budget across and ensure that those budgets are spent, appropriately. We reduce the problems of delays and unspent budgets of infrastructure amongst provincial departments and entities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. Are there any further questions? Okay, I think we can possibly then just hand over to Minister and Provincial Treasury to have some comment on your observations and comments, Member Nkondlo. I must say that I believe that there's a discussion or that we need to have with Provincial Treasury on this whole aspect of cost-reflective tariffs, and I think the increasing challenge or the steeper challenge that municipalities are starting to face with dealing with cost-reflective tariffs and across the board, because at the same time we have aging infrastructure that is being dealt with, and we also have the affordability impact on citizens. So that is, I think, is a discussion that we can probably try and schedule into the future. And I think the other point that or points that have come out is this whole aspect of municipalities getting to budgets that are ultimately fundable and able to be executed, and possibly we could have a separate discussion on that aspect going into the future. But I'm handing over to Minister and to the team, perhaps to have some observations or comments on that, and then possibly if you I think I'm getting the sense that we can perhaps move to a wrap up at the same time there. And once again, to thank you for the presentations that have been made today in terms of the APP and also the discussion that we've had. The other point too is the ongoing fiscal management that we are going to need as we work through this disaster crisis, because it's certainly going to be with us for a fair amount of time. So over to you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll try and pair some of the questions together as well, because some of them are interrelated, and then I'll hand over to the department for more of the technical ones. Just on the cost-reflective tariffs quickly. So when you deliver a service, there's a cost of delivering that service. And whether you like it or not, you must pay that cost of delivering that service. Now, the revenue that you get in from that service, in an ideal world, and this is how business works, not just it's in the business world, the money you get in from your client must cover the cost of you delivering that service to your client. It's simple mathematics and economics. What we are seeing now, obviously, is the impact on our economy, especially nationally when we look at things like fuel, inflation, food, it's really impacting on people. Now, some of the biggest drivers of your costs in your municipality includes things like the NERSA amount, the increases, which will affect your electricity amounts, and, for example, wages in the municipal space as well, and how wages get negotiated. So those are some of your biggest costs. There are other big costs as well, but some of the costs that municipalities often complain about are NERSA and some of the wages. So it is very difficult, and I'll ask the team just to come in and how we do assist municipalities with cost reflective tariffs. There are some municipalities that are also part of that are also beneficiaries of our grant funding to be able to assist them even with their systems. And the same as cost reflective tariffs is, for example, the funding that you get from National for vulnerable communities and how that links to your indigent policies. We see a lot of municipalities, for example, are actually, because of the impact in society and the impact on our economy, are actually delivering indigent services over and above the National Treasury minimums that have been put. So they have even put additional money on the table to say that we would like to protect our residents and we would like to be able to assist over and above the minimum criteria as set by National Treasury. But I'll just ask the team to give more information on that. On the affordability, so we just need to separate the way valuations increase from the rate in the rands that affects your tariffs. Because if, for example, your valuation increased by 10%, doesn't necessarily mean that your tariff's going to increase by 10%. It depends on the rate in rand in that municipality. But if we look at, for example, migration, and we've tabled migration figures previously, migration is currently at 18.1%. And I'm not talking immigration, I'm talking migration. South Africans across different provinces where we move around. And migration at the moment for our province is about double the economic growth of our province. So if more people are moving to the Western Cape, it's because, and I agree with Mimbonko, that the Western Cape municipalities are performing better than the municipalities in other provinces. And we will never say to someone, we are going to stand in your way of wanting to get quality services and wanting to move to where there's economic opportunities. We want everyone who wants to be here to be able to contribute to our economies. And that's also it's something I'm very passionate about, is in society, we need to be honest about the fact that every single person wants a good life, and we must make sure that we are able to create the environment so that people can have that individual freedom of wanting to decide the quality of services and economic opportunities they would like. And that is very, very important also. We've seen with some of the conflict, even I wouldn't say conflict is a bad word, but I guess conflict in our society domestically, that as a society we really need to stand with one another and have more respect towards one another as a society, that we all want the same things in life. So how can we help one another? But because there's so much migration, it is increasing demand for services, for housing. And what then has to happen? It means that if you're going to have to budget for more water, if you're going to have to budget to provide more electricity, if you're going to have to budget for more housing, it's going to increase your costs. And you will have to respond to that demand. So how do we fix it? At a national level, one of the things that we would have to look at is a different type of financial model for our country. And I'm not just talking municipalities. We would have to rethink financial modeling for the financial model for provinces and municipalities, and how the different equitable shares work. So on one level, it's a vertical consideration, and on one level, it's a horizontal consideration. The second part is Gauteng and the Eastern Cape, we need to help them work. And it's because there are things in other provinces that are breaking down that, and it's not just those two provinces, I'm just using those two because the biggest migration in Stats SA from the provinces we often see coming from those two. So that's the reason I'm using those examples. But if provinces are doing what we are supposed to be doing, then it will also assist us in the different migration patterns across different provinces. Because people move for jobs, but people also sometimes move for services, and we have to acknowledge that. And we have to respond to that because every South African has a constitutional right to basic services, and we work hard to be able to provide that. On the court case and tariffs, I just need to emphasize that the court did not say municipalities cannot cross-subsidize. It did not say municipalities cannot ring-fence revenues, nor did the court invalidate the entire budget. The court focused on the relationship between the service being provided and the tariff being charged. And the court found that by linking certain service charges to property values, the city was using a tariff in a way that resembled a property tax. And I want to say that when we look at the draft budget and we look at the budget now, the city does work very, very hard in order to protect the most vulnerable of its people in terms of the way it was attempting to put the tariffs together. So I do not wish to be in the city's shoes right now to have to accommodate the changes it would have to make because of the impact of the court case. Because how does one now protect the poorest households given this particular court case? And I do think that the amended version that the city has put out for public participation, I think they've been working very, very hard to still be able to protect the poorest and most vulnerable households. And they still have time to approve the budget process, and we await the final version to be able to finish those assessments and see what is the final approval. But I do not envy being in that position of having to now rethink how to protect the poorest households, given the impact now of this court case. But we will work with all municipalities if they ever have those type of questions on those budget mechanisms such as tariffs. But I'll just ask the team also to come in regarding some of the municipalities we are assisting in this regard, because in this past year and previously, we've also helped some municipalities with some of their studies. And if we can just give the committee some feedback on those. We've also assisted municipalities on some systems, because sometimes a municipality just needs that little bit of extra support with maybe fixing a system so that they are able to become more financially sustainable. But it is a very difficult conversation because every municipality is also different. But we have to move towards cost reflective tariffs, because otherwise in the long run, we don't want those municipalities to be financially unsustainable. Because also if you become financially unsustainable, you also, when you go and you want to work with the private sector, when you go to the bank, if you ever want to go out on alternative blended financing, what is the first thing someone's going to do when it looks to see whether you're a responsible person? They're going to look at your books. And if you don't have an unqualified audit, if they don't believe that the funding or the money in your municipality is being dealt with in a responsible manner, then what is the incentive for a bank or development institution or the private sector to want to work with you? So it's very, very important that we do have financial sustainability in municipalities. It's very important that we work on good governance, because that is a reflection of the work that you're doing, the decisions that you're making, and the level of responsibility in your municipality as well. So I'm just going to hand over to HOD and the team just to give some more information, as well as the questions regarding the resourcing on infrastructure unit within our department. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you through the chair. Maybe just a succinct response to the latter question that Minister raised, and that is all of this is obviously part of our OD review process. Currently, we are filling all vacant funded positions. But in addition to that, we're also looking at the overall structure of the provincial treasury that speaks to a future fit treasury. And so this is all part and parcel of how we're positioning ourselves to be able to deliver better on our mandate. But currently, we are in the process of filling all the vacant funded positions. So then just in terms of the latter part of, or the first part of it, maybe just to indicate in terms of the cost reflective tariffs and the number of municipalities that we are supporting, that we started to support at least, and that is in relation to the 26-27 financial year. And it might be different aspects of it. So for Bergrivier, we did the cost reflective tariff study, and that there was funding there that was allocated. For Cape Agulhas, it was the development of a charges policy and a calculation tool. Drakenstein talks to supplier portal, but looking at Laingsburg in terms of our asset management plan. And one can see how the issue or the court case and what the court found in terms of the property tax that could be one of the building blocks in order to get a proper structure in place. And then in Oudtshoorn, we looked at the updating of the cost reflective tariff tool, as well as in Prince Albert support in terms of the installation of smart utility meters. For Saldanha, we looked at formal revenue enhancement strategy and development charges. And then in Theewaterskloof, we then again looked at the asset register. So we, for this current year, that is what we have allocated. And then when it comes to, maybe just in addition, because I think Minister's response was quite comprehensive, but we're also working with the National Treasury in terms of the cost reflective tariff tool. And the National Treasury is also spearheading a process that deals with the Metro Trading Services reform, and that is with the aim to ring fence the services. And then hence the need for cost of supply studies, etc. So there's a lot in the space. It's not only from a provincial treasury, but I also think, but also from a national treasury that speaks to the issues around cost reflective tariffs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those responses. I think they do certainly provide us with additional insight into all the various challenges and work streams that Provincial Treasury is dealing with at this stage. I think by all accounts, I think we have probably exhausted the questions and the discussions in terms of what has been presented today and what has been discussed today. I think as the meeting has progressed, there's certainly indications that further discussions will be held on a number of the topics that we have been through today that we can discuss in the months going ahead and at appropriate times. So I think I would like to thank Minister and thank HOD and your teams, as well as the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board for their presentation and insights that have been provided. So thank you very much for what we've had today, and we can now excuse your teams so that you can get back to other duties that I imagine that you have for today. So thank you very much for being with the committee today.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks very much. I think to committee, I think we can now look at the various resolutions and possible recommendations in going forward, as well as dealing with some of our internal administrative documentation and approval of minutes and so forth that we would like to do. I recognize Member Masipa. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Are we at resolutions? Or
Yes, we got resolutions and recommendations and you know how we deal with a number of these aspects, and I think there are a few that have arisen. You know, one of the issues that we also just need to try and tackle is this whole aspect of APPs and the point that Member Nkondo made, that you know our engagements with the AG, and because it's not only this committee, I think all the committees have the same aspect because we it covers all of the departments. But you can go ahead, Member Masipa, and then Member Mkondo after that.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think one of the resolutions that I want to recommend is that we probably invite National Treasury to just help us understand, you know, the borrowing, you know, allowed for the provinces going forward, and obviously maybe share with us in terms of capacity of borrowing and what are some of the things that province need to have in place in order to be able to borrow as such. And I'm saying this because I do believe that, you know, it is very important that we also, you know, understand these mechanisms, you know, to be able to be effective in our oversight, you know. But also, you know, then we might just be able to also say, can we also look at maybe our own legislations to really manage this? But also, you know, the borrowing funding mechanism, you know, what is our debt ratio, you know, as a province compared to national, and if there is such breakdown. So yeah, I think for me really it's just to really immerse ourselves and get the understanding of you know, the ability of province to borrow. We know that the metro can do, and obviously the National Treasury does conduct oversight over the metros. But I think just as a province, you know, just to get ourselves, you know, better equipped in order for us to conduct effective oversight on these things. Thanks, Chairperson.
Yes, look, I think, you know, I would agree with you there, but I think what we possibly need to add to that is this particular situation that we have as a result of the disaster that we now have, and the extent of that funding, how one tries to deal with those aspects. So we should probably add that to the whole aspect of disaster funding, and you know, the key infrastructure or the impact on infrastructure and the importance of key infrastructure for the entire, not only the economy, but it becomes the entire movement, and it's a socio-economic issue in terms of, for instance, certain passes, bridges, roads, etc., that are now out of commission. So we should probably add that to it. A member Nkondlo?
Chair, I would agree with you that we must add that issue of the disaster funding with Treasury, because if we're going to have a engagement with National Treasury, surely there has been some other issues that we had raised earlier on, including the situation of the municipalities. So I think that agenda for National Treasury, would need to also include those items, because I agree with Member Masipa around, our current frameworks. What do they say? What do they mean? What is the flexibility? I remember there's also, I think a year or two ago, a view on the PSPs with Treasury in terms of the triple P model, which also becomes very important to date to understand, especially on what role and what issues get to be financed by government and those that are not. As I think we're talking with the minister earlier, and it was raised yesterday by Minister of Infrastructure, that there are certain things that must be covered by insurance companies. There are others, if you look at the working class and the poor, may not necessarily be able to have such. So I think this is a conversation that is important in rethinking public finances in this particular era that we are in. So for me, I would really want such a comprehensive conversation with Treasury so that we understand what is it that they're discussing up there. And then when we are told by our MECs that these issues, when we are told by our MECs that they are raising these issues with National Treasury, we can best, I think, as Member Masipa was saying, how do we assist? We need to use that, as part of our assistance to our MECs on matters that have been raised, that we find that, there is no clarity, and therefore you end up having challenges at a service delivery level. So I think that for me is important. I'm not going to repeat the things that I have asked information which has been promised. So I would assume that the committee coordinator would have taken care of those issues that I've raised. But I would like to just request that we get a copy of the copies of these cost-reflective studies that were mentioned of Cape Agalas and the other municipalities that the HOD was making reference to. And I would also like to get a copy, one on the gambling board, the issue of the posts they were referring to, indicating which functions or roles are those specific posts and how long will those posts be vacant, because I hear what the minister is saying, which makes sense to wait to fill in these vacancies. But also, it doesn't take away that in this dynamic and changing environment, if those particular posts are no longer a priority, and according to the board feels that these are posts that are a priority, it is important for us to understand that so that we are able to then make a necessary, advice on the matter of staffing, because I'm worried with what is happening, especially, how gambling, particularly the illegal gambling, can actually spiral out of hand with technology. And I'm not saying our gambling board currently has got any HR capabilities. I'm just saying caution that is important to ensure that our board is as capacitated as it can in this very volatile and changing environment. So I think it's important just to get that information to understand what is happening in that score. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that, Member Mkondo. Yes, I think what as you have indicated, we did touch on the aspects of the triple P model. And I think, what we now have is we've got quite a few aspects in terms of the request then to National Treasury to try and cover a little bit more comprehensively a number of the issues that we would like to be briefed on, because certainly those impediments that municipalities continue to face through the MFMA in what they are able to do in terms of undertaking infrastructure projects, that can be explained to us. And I think it's also of particular importance is the aging water and sanitation infrastructure, and those particular difficulties that we are seeing across municipalities now, that gets dealt with. So I think we will build that into the whole aspect there. I think there are also a number of the areas we've covered: cost reflective studies. We've covered these SIME engagements that the province has with the municipalities. I think we need to probably get at least some form of summary of those levels of conclusions or observations in relation to particular municipalities, and what has been asked of them and what those responses have been. Because I think it's probably becoming a lot more clearer that some of the budgets that the municipalities are looking at are perhaps not as comprehensive or as well thought through as they should be. And that is why we then get these situations where we are seeing financial recovery plans. So and we'll try and craft something around that. Okay, I don't know if there are any further thoughts on that. What also just seems to be a concern and something that we need to look at from a committee point of view is the upcoming local government elections, and indications that we will probably be on constituency work, if we can put it that way, before those elections take place, and that will then also impact on the number of meetings that we will be able to have in the next few months. So we will certainly try and prioritize a number of these more important issues to be tackled in the next few months. So certainly that is what my objective will be, and also just to re-look at what else we've already tried to schedule for the next few months, given the changing circumstances that we have, if that is fine with committee. I think if we've covered that from resolutions and recommendations, procedural officer, perhaps we can move to dealing with some of the various minutes and reports that we just need to try and cover while we are here together, before we reach 12 o'clock today. I think we're looking at the meeting minutes for the 22nd of May. Hi there, procedural officer, are you there? You were muted.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, this is the minutes of the 22nd of May. first of 3 sets of documents to be adopted by the members.
Okay, will you perhaps just try and flight that we can quickly page through that and get proposers and seconders for the minutes? So that's the 22nd of Friday, the 22nd of May. And that, if you could just scroll up there or scroll down.
Would you like me to continue scrolling down?
Yes, you can continue scrolling down. That was the meeting where we received the financial recovery plan reports and the engagement that we had following that, and that was to call a meeting with National Treasury, Provincial Treasury and SALGA to engage on government's challenges and to request a briefing on the research unit on case studies of municipalities within the country that have successfully recovered. So that was what our resolutions were at that stage. Member Bryant.
Chair, I propose that we adopt the minutes.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Okay, colleagues, who would like to second that?
Seconded, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Bemba Nkondlo. Right, okay, thank you very much for that. Then our next item before us is Friday, 27 March. I think you can scroll for us. This related to the bill there, Bemba Masipa.
I move for adoption.
Thank you very much. And I think I see Member Bryant, so that'll be a
Yes.
seconding there. Thank you very much. And here we have the quarterly report for January through March 2026. So that were in effect, the last 3 months of the financial year, then ending in March. And so that would then run through our various engagements that we had over that period of time. And that is there before us. That included our visit in February to George and the various meetings there. And that indicates there also the amount of money that we spent and in that particular year. So if we can get approval on that. I see Member Bryant.
I propose that we approve, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Bryant. And we've got Member Masipa, I think, indicating.
Chair, before you go for approval, I just want to ask, Chair, is this particular Committee of Finance not allowed to do oversight? For example, if this particular committee were to want to go to those municipalities under financial recovery, as an example, to try and understand the work that we are engaging with, because I normally find that finance standing committees or committees are not as active in terms of interface work outside of the standing committee. So I was just trying to understand that part in terms of the work of the committee, if I may be clarified.
Yes, I'm certainly believe we can do that. You know, particularly where the province is directly involved in such matters. I think what is one of the areas that we is really the entry point. And the entry point, I think, in touching on municipalities is that municipalities report their financial results to provincial treasury. They are required to do that in terms of legislation. And I think it is once those reports then come to the provincial legislature, as is required in terms of the MFMA, and in the case then of financial recovery plans, that that entry point then opens up for us as a standing committee. That is the understanding that that I've gained so far on the whole role. So therefore, I believe that once we've had financial recovery plans which we have now received, we can probably undertake that level of oversight visit to those municipalities that are included in that process. So certainly it is something we can explore and then see how we can handle that. Okay, we've got the tracking document with us, and that was the tracking document being April 25 to March 26, that our procedural officer that has been flighted in front of us. So we sort of at May going into August now, and then covering October and moving through to February and to March this year, covering all of those activities of the Finance Committee last year. And I guess we just need a proposer and a seconder for accepting that document. Member Bryant.
I propose we accept it, Chair.
Thank you very much. And if we have a seconder. Seconder, any seconder there? I know it's cocktail hour at 12 o'clock, so I imagine if we can get a seconder here, then we can be in time. Who would like to second Member Bryant?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I suppose if we don't have a seconder, maybe we have to hold this over to the next meeting. I don't know.
Okay, I see Member Mbombo. Oh, you seconding. I'm assuming that you are seconding Member Mbombo. Okay, thank you very much for that. And if we can then, Ms. Sasamusa, have we covered all of those little aspects that we need to cover?
Yes, Chair. Everything is covered that needed to be adopted, and I have noted all the recommendations requested by the members.
Thank you very much. Thank you to committee for being with us today. It unfortunately, we've gone a full 3 hours over here, but thank you very much for your participation and for your questioning and suggestions, resolutions, recommendations. They are appreciated. We will certainly be having a look at how best we can implement that as soon as possible. So thank you very much for today. The meeting is therefore adjourned. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.